and the other one was a Bugatti Chiron Sport out in Miami.
That is so sick.
We later found that Bugatti didn't think that we were going to be able to separate this car in half and put it back together.
We're looking good, we're looking good.
But we managed to do.
Every car rebuild tells a story. The crash, the damage, the long nights in the workshop, the hunt for parts, and finally the moment when the engine starts again. For most viewers, that is where the story ends. The car is fixed, the video gets millions of views, and everyone moves on to the next project. But what if the real story actually starts after the rebuild is finished? What happened to the cars that made Mat Armstrong famous? Did they stay perfect? Did they break again? Were they sold for profit? Or did some of them create even bigger problems after the cameras stopped rolling? Today, we are looking at what happened after some of Mat Armstrong's most famous rebuilds. And the answers might surprise you. Point one of the reasons Mat Armstrong became one of the biggest automotive creators on YouTube is because he does not just buy normal used cars. He buys cars that many people would consider impossible to save. Cars with major crash damage, electrical problems, missing parts, or huge repair bills. Most owners and insurance companies give up on these vehicles. Matt sees them as opportunities. Over the years, he has rebuilt Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, Porsches, Audis, BMWs, and even one of the most famous hypercars ever made, the Bugatti Veyron. Millions of viewers watch these projects from start to finish. However, very few people know what happened after the rebuild videos ended. Many people assume that once a car is rebuilt, it immediately becomes a perfect vehicle. The truth is often very different. Modern supercars are incredibly complicated machines. A rebuild can solve visible damage, but hidden problems can remain. Sometimes issues only appear after hundreds or thousands of miles. In other cases, manufacturers make repairs difficult because special software, coding, or dealer-only tools are required. This means that finishing a rebuild is often only the beginning of a much longer journey. Take Matt's Ferrari projects as an example. Some of his Ferrari rebuilds look completely impossible when they first arrive at the workshop. Damaged body panels, missing components, warning lights, and repair costs that would scare most buyers away. Yet after weeks or months of work, the cars look factory fresh again. For viewers, the ending felt like a victory. The Ferrari was saved. The story was complete. But in reality, ownership of a rebuilt supercar is rarely that simple. These cars still require expensive maintenance, specialist knowledge, and constant attention. Even after a successful rebuild, unexpected problems can appear without warning. Then there is a question of value. One of the biggest reasons rebuild channels attract millions of viewers is because people love seeing whether a creator can beat the market. If a damaged supercar can be bought cheaply and repaired for less than its final value, there is potential profit. But the automotive market changes quickly. Some cars gain value after being rebuilt. Others do not. A rebuilt title, accident history, or changing market conditions can affect what a vehicle is worth. This means that a successful rebuild does not always guarantee a successful financial result. Perhaps the biggest example of this is the Bugatti Veyron project. When Matt revealed that he had bought a Bugatti, the automotive world could hardly believe it. For many viewers, it felt like the ultimate rebuild challenge. Yet as the project continued, it became clear that owning a Bugatti was very different from owning almost any other car. Parts availability, service costs, and manufacturer restrictions created challenges unlike anything seen before on the channel. Even after getting the car running, new problems continued appearing. In many ways, the Bugatti proved that the most difficult part of rebuild is not always getting the car started. Sometimes it is keeping the car running long after the cameras stop recording. And that raises the biggest question of all, which rebuilds truly became success stories, and which ones created problems that nobody expected. To answer that, we need to go back through some of Mat Armstrong's most famous projects and discover what happened after the rebuild were finished. When people think about Mat Armstrong's channel, some of the first vehicles that come to mind are the Lamborghinis and Ferraris that helped turn his rebuild projects into must-watch content. These cars were not simply repaired and forgotten. In many cases, their stories continued long after the final rebuild episode was uploaded. What makes these projects so interesting is that viewers often only see the dramatic beginning and the exciting ending. They see the damaged supercar arrive on a trailer. They watch the repair process, and then they celebrate when the car drives again. But real-world ownership brings a completely different set of challenges. Once a rebuilt supercar returns to the road, it must prove itself every day. That is where the true test begins. One of the biggest lessons Matt learned from his Ferrari projects was that modern supercars rely heavily on electronics. Years ago, repairing a damaged car was mostly about replacing bent metal and fixing mechanical parts. Today, even a small accident can affect dozens of sensors, control modules, cameras, and safety systems. A car may look perfect on the outside while hiding electronic fault deep within its systems. This means that many rebuilds continue even after the bodywork is complete. There are software updates to perform, fault codes to remove, calibrations to complete, and systems that need to communicate properly with each other. In several projects, Matt discovered that solving these hidden issues required just as much effort as repairing visible damage. This reality surprised many viewers because the hardest problems were often invisible. The Lamborghini projects created similar challenges. Lamborghini vehicles are famous for their dramatic styling and incredible performance, but they are also known for their complexity. Parts are expensive, labor costs are high, and certain components can take weeks or even months to obtain. During rebuilds, finding damaged parts is difficult enough. After the rebuild is finished, maintaining the car becomes the next challenge. Many owners of exotic vehicles discover that routine maintenance can cost far more than expected. A successful rebuild does not remove those ongoing expenses. Instead, it simply allows the owner to start experiencing them. This is one reason why some rebuilt supercars eventually get sold. The rebuild may be complete, but the cost of long-term ownership remains significant. Another interesting thing that happened after several famous rebuilds was a growing confidence Matt developed in sourcing parts outside official dealer networks. Early in his rebuilding career, many repairs depended heavily on manufacturer parts and dealership support. As more projects were completed, he became increasingly skilled at identifying shared components, cross-referencing part numbers, and finding alternatives. This knowledge often saved thousands of pounds. Viewers saw the final result, but behind the scenes, these discoveries completely changed how future rebuilds were approached. Every completed project became a learning experience that made the next challenge easier. Knowledge gained from one Ferrari could help solve problems on another. Experience with one Lamborghini might reveal shortcuts that save time on future repairs. Of course, not every rebuild produced immediate success. There were occasions when cars returned with new faults, unexpected warning lights, or mechanical issues that had not appeared during testing. This is completely normal in the automotive world, especially when dealing with high-performance vehicles that have experienced major accidents. A rebuilt car may perform perfectly during initial tests and then develop a fault weeks later. Sometimes the issue is related to the original damage. Other times it is simply normal wear and tear. What separates successful rebuilders from unsuccessful ones is their willingness to continue solving problems even after the main project appears complete. Matt's audience rarely sees these smaller challenges because they often happen between major video releases, yet they remain an important part of ownership. Perhaps the most valuable thing that happened after many of these famous rebuilds was the trust they built with viewers. Each successful project proved that damaged supercars could be saved through patience, research, and determination. More importantly, they showed that rebuilding was not just about making money. It was about understanding how these incredible machines work. That reputation eventually opened the door to even bigger projects. Cars that once seemed impossible suddenly became realistic options. The confidence gained from rebuilding Ferraris and Lamborghinis would eventually lead Matt toward vehicles that few independent creators would dare touch. And among those future projects was one machine that would challenge everything he had learned so far, the Bugatti Veyron. If the Ferrari and Lamborghini rebuilds helped establish Mat Armstrong as one of the biggest automotive creators on YouTube, then the Bugatti Veyron project pushed him into an entirely different category. The moment news spread that Matt had purchased a Bugatti, people across the automotive world were shocked. This was not just another damaged supercar. The Veyron was one of the most famous hypercars ever built. It was a machine designed to break records, challenge engineering limits, and prove what was possible when cost was almost no object. For many viewers, buying a damaged Ferrari seemed ambitious. Buying a damaged Bugatti seemed almost impossible. Yet that was exactly what Matt decided to do. When the Bugatti first arrived, many people assumed the rebuild would follow a familiar pattern. The damage would be repaired, faulty parts would be replaced, and eventually the car would return to the road. What nobody expected was how many challenges would continue appearing after the major repairs were completed. In fact, the Veyron became the perfect example of why finishing a rebuild does not necessarily mean the project is over. Instead, it showed that some cars continue testing their owners long after the cameras captured the first successful drive. One of the biggest surprises involved maintenance and servicing. Most people had heard stories about Bugatti's service costs, but few knew whether those stories were true. As Matt began investigating the car more closely, he discovered that owning a Veyron was unlike owning almost any other vehicle. Certain parts could not simply be ordered online. Some components were difficult to source. In many cases, official Bugatti procedures required work to be completed through approved channels. This created a situation where even relatively simple maintenance tasks became major projects. Instead of accepting these costs without question, Matt began researching alternatives. That investigation eventually revealed that some parts were far more common than people realized. Several components could be traced back to other vehicles within the Volkswagen Group. This discovery did not make Bugatti ownership cheap, but it showed that some maintenance expenses were not as unavoidable as many owners believed. However, the Veyron story was never just about service costs. The real challenge involved reliability. Even after major repairs were completed, the car continued presenting new problems. Warning lights appeared. Transmission faults needed investigation. The gearbox hydraulic system required attention. Engine misfires created additional headaches. Each time one problem seemed solved, another issue appeared. To many viewers, this might have looked frustrating, yet from a content perspective, it actually made the project more interesting. The Bugatti became an ongoing adventure rather than a simple rebuild. Every new challenge revealed something about how these rare hypercars operate and what owners must deal with behind the scenes. Another thing that happened after the Bugatti rebuild was a shift in public perception. Before the project began, many people viewed the Veyron as an untouchable machine that could only be maintained by factory technicians. Watching an independent creator work on one of the world's most famous hypercars changed that perception. Viewers saw that while the car was incredibly advanced, it was still built from components, systems, wiring, sensors, pumps, filters, and mechanical parts like any other vehicle. The difference was the scale of complexity and the cost of mistakes. This realization made the Bugatti feel more relatable, even though it remained one of the most exclusive cars ever created. Financially, the project also sparked huge debate among fans. Some viewers believed the rebuild would generate massive profits because of the attention it received. Others argued that the ongoing costs, unexpected repairs, and time investment would consume much of any financial gain. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. While the Bugatti attracted enormous viewership and helped grow the channel, it also required huge amounts of research, labor, and risk. Unlike many projects where the final goal is simply repairing the car, the Veyron became a long-term commitment. Every new issue demanded more time, more investigation, and more resources. Perhaps the most important thing that happened after the Bugatti rebuild was that it raised the standard for every future project. Once viewers had watched a creator buy and repair a Bugatti Veyron, expectations naturally changed. Suddenly, ordinary rebuilds no longer seemed quite as extraordinary. The Bugatti became a benchmark against which future projects would be measured. Yet despite all the attention surrounding the Veyron, it was not the only rebuild whose story continued after the cameras stopped rolling. Several other famous projects experienced unexpected twists, hidden costs, and surprising outcomes that many viewers never heard about. And some of those stories prove that even successful rebuilds can produce results nobody sees coming. One thing that many viewers never fully see is what happens after the excitement of a rebuild fades away. During a project, every step feels important. There are damaged panels to replace, engines to repair, wiring problems to solve, and huge moments when a car finally starts for the first time. Millions of people watch those moments because they are dramatic and exciting. But after the cameras stop recording and the videos are uploaded, a completely different reality begins. The owner must live with the car. They must maintain it, insure it, store it, and deal with any unexpected problems that appear. This is where many of Mat Armstrong's famous rebuilds revealed lessons that were just as important as the rebuilds themselves. Point one of the biggest hidden costs after any rebuild is maintenance. Even if a damaged supercar is purchased for a bargain price and repaired successfully, it still remains a supercar. A rebuilt Ferrari still requires Ferrari-level maintenance. A rebuilt Lamborghini still needs expensive servicing. A rebuilt McLaren still contains advanced technology that can develop faults over time. Many people focus only on the purchase price and repair cost, but long-term ownership often becomes one of the most expensive parts of the entire journey. This reality became clearer as Mat continued spending time with some of the vehicles he had rebuilt. The cars might look perfect on YouTube, but keeping them that way required constant attention. Insurance created another challenge that many viewers never consider. Insuring a normal family car is usually straightforward. Insuring a rebuilt exotic vehicle can be very different. Insurance companies often look carefully at accident history, vehicle value, repair records, and replacement costs. In some cases, finding suitable coverage can take time. For rare supercars, insurance costs alone can become a significant part of ownership. This is especially true when the vehicle has a history that includes major damage. Although the rebuild may have restored the car physically, its past remains part of its story forever. Another interesting thing that happened after many rebuilds involved public attention. When Mat first started rebuilding cars, most projects attracted interest mainly from automotive enthusiasts. As the channel grew, however, some of the cars became famous in their own right. Fans recognized them at events, on the road, and across social media. Certain rebuilds became closely linked to specific moments in the channel's history. This created an unusual situation where some vehicles developed value beyond their mechanical worth. They became pieces of YouTube history. To the average buyer, a rebuilt supercar might simply be another used vehicle. To dedicated viewers, it could be a car they have followed for months during every stage of its transformation. The growing popularity of the channel also brought new opportunities. Manufacturers, specialists, and suppliers who may never have paid attention before suddenly became aware of the projects. This sometimes made future rebuilds easier because connections within the automotive industry expanded. Knowledge gained from one project could open doors during the next. Over time, Mat built relationships with experts who understood exotic vehicles at the highest level. These relationships became incredibly valuable when dealing with rare parts, unusual problems, or technical information that would otherwise be difficult to obtain. Not every surprise was positive, however. Several rebuilds demonstrated that hidden issues can remain dormant for long periods before finally appearing. A sensor might work perfectly during testing, and then fail months later. A component that survived an accident may gradually reveal internal damage over time. Electrical systems are especially known for creating delayed problems. This does not necessarily mean the rebuild was unsuccessful. It simply reflects the reality of modern vehicles. Cars contain thousands of components, and even the most careful inspection cannot predict every future issue. What matters is how quickly those problems are identified and solved when they appear. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from all these famous rebuilds is that the final episode is rarely the true ending. Viewers often think of a rebuild as a straight line with a clear finish. In reality, rebuilding a car is more like opening a new chapter. The repaired vehicle continues creating experiences, challenges, expenses, and opportunities long after the repair work is complete. Some projects become reliable success stories. Others require ongoing attention. A few even reveal surprises years later. And as Mat continued taking on bigger and more ambitious projects, one thing became clear. The rebuilds themselves made for great videos, but what happened afterward often told an even more fascinating story. One of the biggest questions viewers ask after watching any rebuild series is simple. Did Mat Armstrong actually make money from it? It is an understandable question because many of the cars featured on the channel are purchased with significant damage, repaired over weeks or months, and then revealed looking almost brand new. On the surface, the formula seems straightforward. Buy a damaged supercar for less than market value, repair it, and then enjoy the difference between the purchase cost and the final value. However, the reality is far more complicated. Once people look beyond the dramatic thumbnails and successful endings, they discover that rebuilding exotic cars is not always a guaranteed financial win it appears to be. The first thing many people forget is the sheer amount of labor involved. When viewers watch a 20-minute video, they see only a small fraction of the work that actually took place. Hundreds of hours can disappear into research, sourcing parts, troubleshooting faults, waiting for deliveries, and solving unexpected problems. Some repairs that appear simple on screen may have taken days to complete behind the scenes. While Matt often performs much of the work himself alongside his team and family, that labor still has value. If the same repairs are performed commercially, the labor cost alone could be enormous. This means that calculating profit is not as simple as subtracting repair bills from the car's value. Parts costs create another major factor. Throughout many rebuilds, viewers saw Matt find clever alternatives to expensive manufacturer parts. He often cross-referenced components, searched for compatible replacements, and discovered ways to reduce costs without compromising quality. These discoveries sometimes saved thousands of pounds. However, not every part could be sourced cheaply. Certain components remained expensive regardless of where they came from. In some projects, a single part could cost more than an entire used family car. Shipping costs, import fees, taxes, specialist tools, and diagnostic equipment also added to the total. The final repair bill was often much larger than viewers initially expected. Then there is the issue of market value. Automotive prices do not remain constant. A car that appears highly profitable during the planning stage may experience market changes before the project is complete. Some vehicles become more valuable due to rarity or growing demand. Others lose value because newer models are released or buyer interest shifts elsewhere. Timing can play a huge role in determining whether a rebuild becomes financially successful. A project completed during a strong market may produce excellent results. The same project finished during a weaker market could tell a very different story. Interestingly, the biggest source of value from many rebuilds may not have been the cars themselves. Instead, it was the content created around them. Millions of viewers watched these projects from around the world. The videos generated views, subscribers, sponsorship opportunities, and brand partnerships. In many cases, the content became more valuable than any profit that could have been made by simply selling the finished vehicle. This is something that separates modern YouTube rebuild projects from traditional car flipping. Matt was not just repairing cars. He was telling stories. Each project became a documentary-style journey filled with challenges, setbacks, discoveries, and victories. The audience became emotionally invested in the outcome. That connection created value far beyond the physical car sitting in the workshop. The growth of the channel after these famous rebuilds proves this point clearly. Every successful project attracted new viewers. People who arrived for one Ferrari, rebuild stayed for a Lamborghini project. Those who came for a Lamborghini stayed for the Bugatti. Over time, the audience expanded from dedicated car enthusiasts to casual viewers who simply enjoyed watching impossible challenges being overcome. This broader appeal transformed the channel from a niche automotive project into one of the most recognizable automotive brands on YouTube. Perhaps the most remarkable outcome of all these rebuilds is how they changed expectations. Years ago, rebuilding a crashed supercar on YouTube seemed unusual. Today, viewers actively wait to see what impossible vehicle Matt will attempt next. Each successful project built trust with the audience. They learned that even when a car looked beyond saving, there was always a chance it could return to life. That reputation became one of the channel's greatest